Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of KFFB's Open Mic program. I almost feel like this is a fireside chat, but we do have Senator John Boozman with us right now. And Senator, it does really feel like that each week. I mean, people talk about they enjoy us getting together and kind of updating what's going on in D.C. and getting some word pictures there.
Well, I certainly enjoy being on and appreciate your show very, very much. And it's good to communicate. That's so important. It's just trying to get information as to what's going on in Washington.
Well, that's true. And I know that America's getting back to work. We're seeing Arkansas came up to phase 2 this week, and that's something the governor mentioned. And that means a lot of the businesses are already at phase 2, but that's just opening up a little more. And the case load is going up, mainly in northwest Arkansas. But we still got to do, as you always said, what Mama told us to do, wash your hands and keep your hands out of your mouth.
No, that's right. And I would encourage people to wear the mask when they're out. Again, thinking about themselves, but certainly as importantly, maybe more importantly, worrying about their neighbor when they're in the grocery store and things like that. So good news is we are able to get out and about, but as you mentioned, cases are picking up, deaths are picking up, and so as a result, we really need to be careful and protect each other.
Well, there's been a lot of protests. We've seen that in D.C., and we talked about that last week, and you said, Bob, it's protest always in D.C., but it swelled up a little more last week. But now there's been talk of defunding the police. Does this got any merit to it, or is this just talking points of one group?
Well, I think actually defunding the police is crazy. In fact, in many neighborhoods, we need more police because one of the problems is that there are people that live in neighborhoods that don't have enough police to keep them safe. And I'm not talking about the gotcha type policing. I'm talking about being, the old-fashioned community policeman that is the beat cop, that gets to know everybody, that really is there, not to give them a ticket to raise revenue and things like that. I'm talking about somebody that cares about the community, cares about people, and is trying to be helpful and helps them in all kinds of different ways. So that's the kind of policing that we need.
And like you talked about last week, it just tore my heart out. I've really thought about it as a lady now in a neighborhood that she can't go and get her medicine. And that's what we got to be careful of.
Right. That's exactly right. And you say, well, John, this isn't going to happen. And, this is rhetoric. You look at Seattle where they've essentially given 6 blocks of city to demonstrators and rioters and things in the sense that, and then just walked away. And so what does that do to the people that live there, the people that have businesses there? I mean, it's absolutely crazy. So, we need change. What we don't want either is that these crazy things drowning out the legitimate things that we do need to fix. And it's not just in policing. We just need to do a much better job in our society of being inclusive, making sure that everybody has equal opportunity. So much of that is from the heart, and that's going to take all of us just working very, very hard. And I think we're in a situation now that there's some possibility for real change in that, and that's a good thing.
Well, and that's what's really great when you look at across the aisle for you, the great American outdoors. This is something you guys have came together to preserve and protect public lands. Well, is passed the Senate.
Well, as we're speaking, Bob, I'm in Washington, and the reason we're here is we've got all of these things going on. We've got COVID, we've got the economy, the racial strife that we're having right now. But along with that, you have to take care of all of those things and then other business. And one of the things that we're working on now is the Great American Outdoors Act, which you mentioned. Really what it's about is taking care of the national parks. We're blessed. We have, these are the vacation spots for so many families. They're affordable. You can go, you can fly or drive or whatever. But the sad thing is we've put off maintenance for decades. And so what this does is make sure that the trust fund that's being used now, although a lot of it's diverted to other things, make sure that the trust fund that was set up to take care of the parks, a little bit of revenue from oil and gas that has been taxed for decades, make sure that money's actually going into the park system so that we'll not only have great parks now, but starting to fix the damage that's been done just through years of use, and then making sure that those are going to be for for the people in the future. We are so blessed as a nation to have these resources. It's a wonderful system, something that we can be very, very proud of. It supports, I think, 340,000 plus jobs. So again, it's a big deal.
Another thing that I thought was really unique, and I love it, I love proactive, that you guys have took on, and that's the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, talking about hearings, being prepared for this pandemic, and if it has a resurgence, making sure we've got the protective gear. This is very good.
Well, I think everybody agrees. Everybody knows that we simply weren't prepared for this. And the VA, like everyone else, didn't have the equipment that they needed. Right now, Bob, we have what's called on-time delivery. And so when you go in the grocery store, the delivery systems now are so efficient. The stuff is delivered right in time. They figured out when people are going to buy it, when you get your paycheck, and they have more stuff during that period and then a little bit less other times. They're very efficient in that manner. We don't have the warehouses that we used to where they just stock stuff and then go get it and put it in the store. And so as a result, nothing to the extent that we needed was warehoused. So what the VA is talking about doing is actually stockpiling these things in different locations throughout the country, just like FEMA does. That's the agency that deals with disasters. They have things stockpiled throughout the country in case of a natural disaster. Then they can go right there and get it in a handy fashion. We're talking about doing the same thing with the VA. These are just common sense things, but you have to plan. One of the things that we're going to do as a result of the pandemic is learn from it and make sure that we're not caught flat-footed like we were going into this one.
Who would ever thought that we would have been so dependent on China for a face mask?
You're exactly right, and that's a whole different situation in the sense that we've got to bring those medical supplies back. And then also we've got a real concern about our medicines themselves. 70% of those are made in China, or they might be assembled here, but the actual component of the medicine is made in China and then shipped over here. So, that's a real source of national security that we've got to work on and balance that out.
Now, something you help introduce this week to legislation to improve mental health services in rural communities through the home-based Telemental Health Care Act. Explain what this is going to do.
Well, this is a grant program to help health providers establish and expand telemental health ability. Again, we just talked about, things that have come out of as a result of the pandemic. The VA has had to switch because people couldn't come into the facilities and be safe. So they've had to switch to telemedicine in lots of different avenues. One of those has been mental health. And the good news is it's been a real success. It's been something that the patients, the people that are in need of this have really enjoyed, and really has just been something that has exceeded expectation. In learning the good job that the VA has done in that regard, what we're trying to do is shift that to the rest of medicine and encourage them to look at that and be able to establish programs of themselves. We talk about all the problems that we've got with policing in this. Sadly, so many of the people that they deal with mentally ill. Our institutions now, we have very few. We don't have very many beds or lockups in institutions for those folks. Sadly, the new institutions have become our local county jail or the prisons themselves. This is something that we need to do a much better job of in heading off confrontation with police through treatment.
The CARES Act, that was something I thought was really neat. There was money went to local hospitals and clinics, and now we're seeing testing done, all the clinics. Arkansas is really ramped up, doing almost 4,000 tests a day, which we've wanted to see since the beginning.
Lots of good things in that area, as you mentioned. I think the governor's doing a great job of trying to sort all of these things out, and he's just got a big job. He and his team are working very, very hard, and I think doing a very, very good job. But last month, Health and Human Services awarded the state, that's the big federal agency of health, it gave them $78 million to expand. So that gives them the ability to do a lot more testing. They've had money that was given to them in the past. This really, adds to that. So lots of money for lots of tests, and the tests are available now. This really gives us a handle on the extent of the virus so that we can recognize individuals early on, get them segregated, find out who they've been visiting with, who they live with. so that we can stop the spread.
And one other thing we just talk about, the supply chain. That's something that you were with the president and working on the supply chain. How do you think the supply chain is working now?
I think it's working much, much better. In fact, it's interesting you ask. I had a virtual tour. Everything's virtual these days, but it was the Cargill plant in northwest Arkansas. And what they were showing, I just wanted to show and get people to understand all of the safeguards that they put in place to try and protect their workers. And they're all garbed up. They're in masks. They've got the plexiglass dividers, break rooms, segregated, one at a table, 6 feet apart, all of those things. Really working very, very hard to try and prevent the spread while they're at work. And so I think that's been a good success story. It's still a problem, but it's not the problem that it was.
Well, I appreciate you taking time and talking with us. They told us you were back-to-back interviews today. But one thing I really think is, you notice we snack a whole lot more with this virtual. Have you noticed that? I've had a virtual meeting with the parks, and I was eating the entire time, So
I understand.
It's
I
a lot
understand.
different.
And you make the mistake, which I don't make, of actually looking to see the calorie count, what I'm eating.
And another thing that I'm really seeing, a lot of businesses are letting workers stay at home. They're not moving them back in so quick. And I really think that's helping the spread as well, keeping it down.
It is. And it's going to be interesting, Bob. We're finding that a lot of people are very efficient at homes. And so the world, I think, is going to be different once the COVID is over. I think you'll still see a lot of people working at home and being very productive. So the technology now is amazing. And the good news is that as this has gone by, that people are learning how to use it. It's going to be a benefit. One of the things that we were very concerned about is making sure that people have access to the broadband, the internet that they need in order to be able to do those things. So that's another problem. Again, those are things that we're working on right now in Congress as we speak to try and make sure that we can solve that problem too. Lots of challenges, lots of opportunities.
Broadband is going to making everyone connect and basically taking a home office, turning into just like the regular office they go to. That's what's going to be so great about it.
No, you're exactly right.
Well, I really appreciate you taking time and talking with us, and we wish you the best, and we'll see you next week.
Well, take care. Like I said, we appreciate you. Bye-bye.